Let's get into Biden's speech last night. This threat to democracy speech. And what he proved was that the presidency is irrelevant. I mean, if you really think about it, you vote for the president every 4 years. How does he really affect your life? You feel good voting for him every 4 years. But the presidency should have no bearing on your day-to-day life. And he had no business coming out and talking about the midterm elections because these are elections held in individual states. He was acting like this was 2024. So we'll analyze his speech, go through it. Not going to do all of it just for the sake of time. But here is Joe Biden's threat to democracy speech. And here's how he starts out. And I do apologize about the audio. As you know, this channel isn't perfect, so the volume may not necessarily be where it should be. There's just certain limitations that I have doing this channel. And the graphic may be a little bit off, but it is what it is. And I think that's the beauty of this thing we call the Culture Confederacy. So here is Biden's speech, threat to democracy.
Just a few days ago, a little before 2:30 a.m. in the morning, a man smashed the back windows and broke into the home of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the third highest ranking official in America.
Oh my God.
He carried in his backpack zip ties, duct tape, rope, and a hammer.
He was a bad dude.
He'd come looking for Nancy Pelosi, to take her hostage, to interrogate her, to threaten to break her kneecaps.
Looking for Nancy Pelosi, threatening her, wanted to interrogate her, break her kneecaps.
My friend Paul Pelosi was home alone. The assailant
In his underwear, by the way.
take Paul hostage. He woke him up. He wanted to tie him up. The assailant ended up using a hammer to smash Paul's skull.
Well, that isn't exactly what happened. Yes, he did attack Paul Pelosi, this lone wolf, who, by the way, President Biden, lived in San Francisco, was an illegal alien from Canada, who was married to or lived with a transgender nudist activist. They had like 3 kids, had a Black Lives Matter poster in the window of their home, a LGBTQ transgender flag out in their front yard. He lived in a yellow bus.
Thankfully, by the grace of God, Paul survived.
And I don't know one person, Republican or Democrat, who is gloating over this and saying, I'm glad that this guy bashed in Paul Pelosi's head. I don't know one person who is saying that.
All this happened after the assault. And it's hard to even say. It's hard to even say.
Is it hard for you to say, Mr. President, or is it that you can't read the teleprompter?
The assailant entered the home asking, "Where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?" Those are the very same.
Here's the rub, folks. Here's the rub.
When they stormed the United States Capitol.
So it's all connected to January 6th. It's all connected to January 6th, 2021. Even though this guy is a lone wolf who lived in a liberal enclave and was married to a transgender nudist activist.
6th, when they broke windows, kicked in the doors, brutally attacked law enforcement.
Oh my God, these people, they kicked in doors, they broke windows, they assaulted law enforcement. Well, the only person who died that day was Ashley Babbitt, a Trump supporter, who was shot and killed by a Capitol police officer. And now there's a story out there, I believe it's at Fox News, that the mother of Brian Sicknick is coming out and saying that all these MAGA Republicans are evil because her son died on January 6th. Well, no, your son didn't die on January 6th because the medical examiner came out and said that your son died days after January 6th due to 2 strokes and natural causes. So the only person, again, who died on January 6th was a Trump supporter, Ashley Babbitt, shot and killed by a Capitol police officer.
Roam the corridors, hunting for officials.
They were roaming the corridors, hunting for officials? Now, granted, you had some people who got out of hand January 6th. But how many of these people? Because this doesn't make any sense to me. I've talked about this before. I talked about this idea of pattern theory. Go study pattern theory. If you got nothing better to do today, then go study pattern theory, which talks about if there's ever a change in a pattern, because the numbers, the symbols, they don't matter. But if there's ever a change in that pattern, that's going to change the result or the outcome. And Trump supporters, MAGA supporters, I'm an independent voter. Trump wasn't my first choice. In fact, I didn't really vote for Trump. I was going more for Ben Carson back in the day. But Trump supporters, people who love this country, you can call them conservative, you can call them Republican, whatever you want to call them, have always backed the police, the military, they believe in the rule of law. So why would they all of a sudden on January 6th go and storm the U.S. Capitol building like it was the Bastille? Oh, because you have these groups like the Oath Keepers that are out there, or the Proud Boys, these far fringe right groups. These far right fringe groups, they represent every single conservative voter out there or somebody like me, right? BS. And President Biden knows this. This is all political fodder just to paint the other side as evil. So his side can win. That's what this is about. This is about a power struggle between these two parties. If I were you, I would not vote for Republican or Democrat. I would say, screw these people, and I'm going to vote for somebody else.
And erected gallows to hang the former Vice President Mike Pence.
Ooh, they erected gallows to hang the former Vice President Mike Pence. Well, we don't have any video of those gallows being constructed. Who constructed those gallows? How did they get there in front of the U.S. Capitol building? No one's answered that question.
It was an enraged mob.
An enraged mob.
Into a frenzy by a president repeating over and over again the big lie.
Did Trump whip his crowd, his supporters into a frenzy? Well, if you go and you check the record on this, this attack on the U.S. Capitol building was happening as Trump spoke. You had a very large crowd there. The number one question I keep going back to, and a lot of people are asking this, where was security? If you knew this was an insurrection, why didn't you call in additional troops, additional security, police officers to nip this thing in the bud? You guys didn't do a damn thing to stop it. You let it happen. And we have video of police officers allowing these people, or Capitol Police, or security, whoever it was, removing these gates and letting these people into what's supposed to be one of the most secure buildings on the planet. And he's going to stand here during this speech and say that Trump whipped these people in a frenzy. Again, I didn't vote for Trump. But Trump, whether you like the guy or don't like the guy, doesn't matter. He's a U.S. citizen. He ran for office, and he has every right under the Constitution to protest the results of an election if he felt he was cheated. Whether you agree with that or not, he has every right to do it. No, he doesn't have a right to instruct people to go attack the U.S. Capitol building, which he never did. He never did. And I go back to this again. He said, and during these hearings, these January 6 hearings, they conveniently edited this part out, where he said, we are going to peacefully and patriotically march to the Capitol building to make our voices heard. That's what Trump said. Those were his exact words. Correct me if I'm wrong, SJWs. Correct me if I'm wrong, Democrats, liberals, whoever you want to, or whatever you want to call yourselves.
That the election of 2020 had been stolen.
So this is the big lie. Joe Biden's saying here, this is the big lie. That the 2020 election was stolen. This is what Trump is feeding his supporters. Well, if there were these narrow instances of fraud, and now there's a related story here. In Pennsylvania, because of what happened in 2020, they are not allowing, so this is a big victory for the GOP, but they are not allowing any of these ballots that are not dated that can't be validated, they're not allowing those to be counted now. And this is one of the tightest Senate races in the country right now between Oz and Fetterman.
It's a lie that fueled the dangerous rise in political violence and voter intimidation over the past 2 years.
Okay, it's a lie, and it caused voter intimidation and violence. What happened in 2020? Oh yeah, we had all these riots in Seattle, Portland, Chicago, LA, you name it. We had all these riots in 2020. Well, I don't remember people who voted for Trump or who were rooting for Trump in 2020. I don't remember them burning down cities, looting and rioting. Do you? You want to go back to Charlottesville? That debacle? Where was security then? And all you people in the media, and I brought this up before, all you people in the media, because I went back and I looked at the tapes. I watched the footage. All you people in the media, you stood there with your tongues hanging out like dogs. There's a riot. There's a riot. We got to report it. There's a riot. That's all you people do. Now, one of you could have put your camera down and said, this isn't right. We're not going to deal with this. Screw these people. We're going home. You get these officers in here and you take care of this problem that we're having right now here in Charlottesville and you get this thing under control. Nobody did that. Nobody did that.
Even before January the 6th, we saw election officials and election workers in a number of states subject to menacing calls, physical threats, even threats to their very lives.
Okay, give us specifics, President Biden. Who exactly carried out these acts? Was it a lone wolf, like this guy in San Francisco who attacked Paul Pelosi? Was it a horde of Trump supporters that attacked a polling station somewhere? Went in front of somebody's house? As I recall, it was quite the opposite. It was these activists from BLM and Antifa. Now, it isn't to say that people who supported BLM at the time were all for all this violence, looting, rioting, and burning down cities. I'm sure they weren't. Look, we have always had political disagreements, and that is the way that our system was designed, because our founders understood that not everybody's going to agree on everything. So they set a certain system in place so that we could have something called debate, free speech.
In Georgia, for example, the Republican
In
Secretary
Georgia.
and his family were subjected to death threats because he refused to break the law and give in to the defeated president's demand, just find him 11,780 votes. Just find me 11,780 votes.
Okay, so was there a question there about those 11,780 votes? If there was, why wasn't that really being investigated? If there were these small instances of fraud, they should have been investigated. But this was the cleanest, the greatest election of our lifetime, 2020. Biden won by a landslide in 2020. That's what they're telling you. But 11,780 votes. All Trump was doing is he was asking, find me these votes. Where are these votes? I know they're out there. Because there were some shenanigans going on. We all know that. Nobody wants to admit to it. Now, it may have not been necessarily illegal, but dirty pool. Dirty pool because it's politics. And this wouldn't be happening if we had more than two parties in the fray here.
Election workers like Shay Moss and her mother Ruby Freeman were harassed and threatened just because they had the courage to do their job and stand up for the truth, to stand up for our democracy. This institution, this intimidation, this violence against Democrats, Republicans, and nonpartisan officials just doing their jobs are the consequence of lies told for power and profit.
That is so rich. That is so rich. Oh, all these lies. Oh, this is all done for power and profit. Like you, Joe Biden, didn't use power and profit to get where you're at. Vote Shoe Biden.
Lies of conspiracy and malice.
What exactly are those lies of conspiracy and malice, Mr. President?
Lies repeated over and over to generate a cycle of anger, hate, vitriol, and even violence.
Was that really the case? Or could it be that you had somebody who thought that they legitimately were cheated on the election in 2020? Doesn't matter, as I said before, doesn't matter whether you like Trump, don't like Trump. He's still an American citizen. He ran for office. He ran for re-election. He had every right to protest the results of that election if he felt that he was wronged in that election cycle. And never once did Trump tell any of his supporters, not just at the U.S. Capitol, as I mentioned, never once did he tell any of his supporters to go out there and attack polling stations or go attack some Democrat congressperson's house or office.
In this moment, we have to confront those lies with the truth.
Okay, what are those lies? What is the truth, Mr. President?
The very future of our nation depends on it. My fellow Americans, we're facing a defining moment.
This is the defining moment.
We must, with one overwhelming, unified voice,
One unified voice.
speak as a country and say there's no place for voter intimidation or political violence in America.
Who's advocating for that? Who is advocating for political violence and voter intimidation? Last time I checked, you had what? The Black Panthers going out there and intimidating voters at polling stations? There's no place for violence and voter intimidation. We must speak in one unified voice. Well, the truth is, Mr. President, and if you don't know this, you shouldn't be president, the United States has never been united. Because the original intent was that you had all these states that joined basically a confederation. That's why we have this thing called the Articles of Confederation, which was our first constitution. And the founders understood that, because they understood people had different political philosophies, different traditions in these different colonies or colonies becoming states. They didn't want to live under the thumb of a king.
Whether it's directed at Democrats or Republicans.
What about us independent voters? Somebody's trying to talk about unity.
No place, period. No place ever. I speak today near Capitol Hill, near the U.S. Capitol, the citadel of our democracy.
The citadel of our democracy. He's speaking near Capitol Hill. You think this guy could get off his ass and actually go up there to maybe a factory and talk to the average American who's getting up and going to work every day trying to have to provide for his family? Just trying to earn a paycheck, having to work maybe 2 or 3 jobs?
I know there's a lot at stake in these midterm elections, from our economy to the safety of our streets, to our personal freedoms, the future of health care, Social Security, Medicare. It's all important.
Yeah, and you were the one who cut off the Keystone Pipeline, President Biden. You want to go for all this green energy. And because of that, now we've got spikes in the price of food, gas, what it costs to own a home or to rent.
But we'll have our differences. We'll have our difference of opinion. And that's what it's supposed to be.
Exactly. So you just confirmed what I just said, that we're supposed to have a system in place where we have all these differences of opinion. Because the founders, they understood that people weren't going to get along. They were living in a very volatile time, the American Revolution, 1770s.
But there's something else at stake. Democracy itself. I'm not the only one who sees it. Recent polls have shown that overwhelming majority of
Name the
Americans
poll, Mr. President.
believe our democracy is at risk.
That's the other lie they're telling you. We don't live in a democracy. We live in what's considered a federal republic, constitutional republic. where the states are supposed to have all the power and the central government is supposed to have a limited role. And the only role of the central government isn't to get its nose involved in state elections, unless there's something nefarious going on with that state election. But the main role of the federal government is to protect the homeland and oversee international affairs or international trade. That's it. Everything else is supposed to be left to the states because that's where the people live. But he's going to backtrack.
They too see that democracy is on the ballot this year, and they're deeply concerned about it. So today, I appeal to all Americans, regardless of party, to meet this moment of national and generational importance. We must vote, knowing what's at stake and not just the policy of the moment, but institutions that have held us together as we sought a more perfect union are also at stake.
Oh, the more perfect union lie. This is never, as I mentioned, this has never been a perfect union. The founders, again, understood that. The United States has never been a perfect union, never will be. We've always been a confederation.
We must vote knowing who we have been, what we're at risk of becoming. Look, my fellow Americans, the old expression, freedom is not free.
Got that right.
It requires constant vigilance. From the very beginning, nothing has been guaranteed about democracy in America.
Again, we don't live in a democracy. And is democracy actually on the ballot? No, democracy is a political ideology. It's an idea. Can you put that political ideology into practice? Will it create effective government?
Every generation has had to defend it, protect it, preserve it, choose it. For that's what democracy is. It's a choice, a decision.
No, democracy isn't a choice. It isn't a decision. It's a political philosophy, a political idea that's put into practice. And we have to see if, when we put that into practice, if it's going to create an effective government.
Vision of the people, by the people, and for the people.
So then why are you giving this speech, President Biden? You have no business getting involved in the midterm elections unless there's something not on the up and up with a state election somewhere.
Clear in my view. We, the people, must decide whether we'll have fair and free elections. And every vote counts. We, the people, must decide.
Yes, every vote counts. And we should not count any vote that isn't valid.
Whether we're going to sustain a republic where reality is accepted.
Okay, now he backtracks. He calls this a republic after calling this a democracy. Which is it, President Biden?
Is obeyed, and your vote is truly sacred. We, the people, must decide whether the rule of law will prevail, or whether we will allow the dark forces.
Dark forces?
To thirst for power. Put ahead of the principles that we've long guided us. You know, American democracy is under attack because the defeated former president of the United States refused to accept the results of the 2020 election.
Okay, so then what you're saying then, President Biden, is because Trump, who has a constitutional right as a candidate to protest the result of an election as it happened in 1800, as it happened during the 1960 election, as it happened in 2000, you're saying then that the Constitution is wrong, invalid. The Constitution is a threat to this thing you consider democracy, yet you call it a republic.
If he refuses to accept the will of the people.
What exactly is the will of the people, President Biden? What is the will of the people? Tell us what the will of the people is.
To accept the fact that he lost.
Which is his right. If he wants to not accept that, then fine.
Before loyalty to the Constitution. And he's made a big lie
He made a big lie. Trump made a big lie.
Republican Party, the minority of that party. The great irony about the 220 election is that it's the most attacked election in our history, and yet
he said the 220 election. We had an election in 220? I didn't know there was the United States in 220. But because of what we have going on now, it's all due to Trump, right? Everything that's happening now is because of Trump.
Yet, there's no election in our history that we can be more certain of its results.
No election in our history that we can be more certain of its results than the 2020 election. Boy, that sounds really odd because you guys were protesting the election back in 2016. Al Gore was protesting the results of the election back in 2000. I lived in Florida when that whole debacle went down. So I'm going to stop it here. I don't want to get too long in the video. But this just goes to show you the irrelevance of the presidency. The Biden has no business coming out here and talking about the midterm elections. This isn't 2024. Let the states decide their elections. Let the people vote. Let the people have a voice. And it should be more than just Republican and Democrat. And coming out and saying that MAGA supporters are somehow evil, they're the dark force in this country, when MAGA just simply means make America great again. How is that evil? How is that creating violence? If anything, that's propping up this thing we call the United States. But somehow Biden doesn't get that. But he's just doing this for political gain to make the other side look bad, as they all do. Just goes to show you that our election system needs a reboot. It really does. It needs a reboot. But I thought I'd share this with you. Biden's threat to democracy speech, even though we've had elections before that have been very close, where there was violence. But this idea that America has always been this place of political harmony is total BS. The founders knew that that was never going to be the case, and they set up a system in which we had this idea of debate, disagreements, and we had a way that we could come together and air those grievances in Congress or through these state or presidential elections. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. You can also follow me at Instagram, hashtag Jason Composes, or find me at Twitter, Culture Confederacy at Twitter. This is the Culture Confederacy saying peace out. Stay safe, everybody. God bless this great country, this thing we call the United States, whatever you want to call it, and I'll catch you next time.